Ode on a Grecian Urn by Keats. We will discuss the form and structure of the poem. This poem was written by the Romantic poet John Keats in May 1819. Ode on a Grecian Urn was first published anonymously in the book Annals of the Fine Arts for 1819. Keats had written odes which were called the Great Odes of 1819, which include Ode on Indolence, Ode on Melancholy, Ode to a Nightingale, and Ode to Psyche. So, Ode on a Grecian Urn is also one of them. The existing types or forms of poetry did not satisfy Keats, and he thought that they did not serve his purpose. Therefore, in this collection, he presented his own new development of the ode form. Keats was well acquainted with how classical Greek art represented Greek virtues, so he himself draws upon these insights. In this poem, he uses 5 stanzas. Each stanza has 10 lines. Therefore, the poem has 50 lines. Keats in the beginning had tried to write sonnets, but he found out that sonnets did not satisfy his purpose. They did not fulfill his purpose because the pattern of the rhyme of sonnets were against the tone that he wished to achieve in his poetry. So, when he switched over to the ode form, he found that the Pindaric form, which was a standard form and was used by Dryden, was also inadequate for discussing philosophy, which he wished to do in his poems. Keats created a new poetic tone that was in line with his idea of expressing aestheticity about poetry. This technique is that of poetic representation of a painting or a sculpture in words. In Ode on a Grecian Urn, Keats replaces actions by asking a series of questions, and he focuses his attention only on the external attributes of his characters. Keats divided Ode on a Grecian Urn in 5 stanzas. Each has 10 lines and each begins with an ABAB rhyme scheme but ends with the Miltonic sestet. That is, first and the 5th stanzas have the rhyme scheme C D E D C E. The second stanza has the rhyme scheme C D E C E D, and the third and the 4th stanzas have the rhyme C D E C D E. The word ode is of Greek origin and it means sung. By the time Keats started writing odes, ode had undergone a lot of transformation and it represented a manner rather than a set method of writing an ode or a certain type of lyrical poetry. In Keats's odes, we find a classical balance between two extremes. In Ode on a Grecian Urn, these two extremes are first the symmetrical structure of classical literature, and second is the asymmetry of romantic poetry. Now, it is very amusing to see that the use of AB structure in the beginning 4 lines of each stanza. This represents an example of structure which was found in classical literature, the set structure. Now, in the remaining 6 lines, Keats breaks free from the traditional poetic styles of the Greek and the Roman odes. Keats relies greatly on assonance, which is found in a few English poems. In Ode on a Grecian Urn, an example of assonance can be found in line 13, where Keats writes, "Not to the sensual ear, but more endeared." Here we see that the E of sensual, it connects itself with the E of endeared, and also the EA of ear connects itself with the EA of endeared. Keats uses the images of love and poesy in Ode on a Grecian Urn and emphasizes how the urn, which is a human artistic construct, can relate to the idea of truth. Thus, he describes the images of the urn within the poem as obvious depictions of common activities. These activities are shown as an attempt at courtship, music, a religious rite, and the figures are supposed to be beautiful, as the urn is itself beautiful as well as realistic. He creates a narrator who interacts with the urn. The urn is also used as a symbol which describes the relationship between art and humanity. The Grecian urn is a piece of art. It cannot speak on itself, that is why it requires an audience. And this helps the poet and the urn to interact with humanity, to put forward its narrative and also allow the imagination to operate. The images which are depicted on the urn, they provoke the narrator to ask questions. On the other hand, the silence of the urn reinforces the imagination's ability to work. Thus, we see that Ode on a Grecian Urn is written in a different form, and is each stanza is 10 lines long, and it is metered in a relatively precise iambic pentameter. It is divided into two-part rhyme scheme, and the last 3 lines of which are variable. So Keats tries various poetic and also rhetorical approaches to the urn in each stanza because he desired to communicate with it. So the overall strategy is apostrophe, that is, the address of an absent figure, an abstract figure, or an object. Keats addresses the urn as thou, and then he personifies it as a bride of quietness, a foster child of silence, and then as an historian. He uses a number of questions, that is, uses interrogations and also alliterations such as leaf fringed legend. Then he uses assonance and also pastoral imagery of antiquity. In the second stanza, Keats tells that the urn's tale is sweeter than poetry, and also The silent music of the urn is sweeter than the heard melodies which are played to the physical ear. Therefore, he suggests E soft pipes play on. In the fourth stanza, through a number of questions like who, where, from where, and why, Keats leads us to a slow pastoral procession in which he shows us a mysterious priest leading a heifer to a green altar on a pious religious morning in a seaside or a town having a mountain citadel in the line and all her silken flanks and garlands dressed. He uses perfect iambic lines which are filled with alliteration and assonance of K's and S's and also ES, that is silken flanks, garlands dressed. In the final stanza, Keats apostrophizes the urn by saying, O Attic shape, fair attitude, cold pastoral. Thank you.